Welcome to Undercomplicated. This is where we, two psychologists with over 40 years of combined experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate important topics. Friendly reminder that this is meant to be conversational and for entertainment purposes only. So if you have questions for us, please leave comments in the on our page, but also please see the information below this video for some resources.
Stacey Gedeon, health psychologist and also a healthcare consultant and professional coach, and do speaking.
Julie Radico, also a psychologist, a coach, author, and a speaker. Co-wrote a book. The link is in the description of. It's called "You Will Get Through This." It's a mental health toolkit. And our question is, what is mind reading?
I love this topic. It's so common. Guilty. And of course, we're not talking about the superpower mind reading things. What we're
Ooh.
talking about are distorted thoughts, things that we all have. And a general definition is it's when you are assuming you know what others are thinking without really having evidence.
Hmm.
And it also tends to lean towards negative. So rarely do we find ourselves wondering about a situation and we're filling in the gaps, with something positive. So it's
Hmm.
almost like reading a movie script and half of it's missing, and you're just kind of filling in with stuff, and it's not based on fact. Yeah. So do you come across this much in your practice?
100%. I think most people, period, have mind read at some point in time. It is something that tends to be negative. So, like, mind reading is this is jargon, everybody, but like it falls into this category of cognitive distortions, like unhelpful thinking habits. And at some very low level, you could make the argument that mind reading is adaptive
Mhm.
or helpful. So like if Stacey and I are having this conversation we're having, and I start to look like I'm gritting my teeth and I get really loud and I'm making a fist. Like she might want to mind read and go, "Is Julie mad at me? Like, well, this is not going well." But if I'm sitting here neutral or smiling and Stacey is thinking, "Oh, is Julie mad at me?" That's mind reading. That's not adaptive anymore. That's us, exactly like you're saying, filling in the gaps in the script in a way that just makes us anxious, stressed, worried, to start to doubt ourselves or to feel really overly self-conscious in what we're doing and saying. And it takes us oftentimes like out of the moment. So I for sure hear this from clients. I'm curious, because I am one of the great examples that I know we've talked about is, you know, social media and just the way that we interact with each other, like texting and email and like all of this messaging kind of stuff is rife for mind reading. And I will start us off because I'm curious. I know you have examples that you could share with everybody. But I love my dad. He's a great dad. He will, and he has in the past, and he's much better. And he's probably going to listen to this, and he will be able to say, "Yeah, I've done that." He would sometimes send texts in the past that just said, "Call me." And so my brain, Stacey, went, "Something's wrong. He's not like he's in trouble. I have to help. What's going on?" And then I would reach out and he'd be like, "Oh no, I just meant like call me when you get a chance. I want to catch up." And so like
Very
that,
efficient. Yeah.
yeah, right. It's a efficiently helpful in me going into a mind reading spiral of no, something's wrong. I'm curious, are there other like examples or that you have heard of or experienced?
Yes, I think a common one that we all might experience at work at some point is maybe a typically verbose writing
Mm,
of an email from someone who typically adds a lot of language, and all of a sudden it's a very short email. Maybe this person's your boss.
mm,
And now you're thinking, oh, okay, what does this mean? You're trying to interpret, the number of periods and commas and semicolons and exclamation points, and what does this all mean? And so that's, I think, something that a lot of us have experienced.
mm.
Also, again, the way we communicate, text is really open to interpretation. So perhaps you're texting back and forth with a friend, you're trying to make plans to get together, and all of a sudden there's silence on the other end.
Mm.
And so you're wondering, okay, are they upset? Are they okay? Is something going on? And or the worst case when you just get the three dots that just keep pulsating and you're kind of wondering if they're going to respond.
Yes.
Um, do you think there are reasons why our bodies do this or our brains do this? What
Mm.
might be some adaptive benefits of trying to read minds?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. And we wouldn't hold on to it as a species if it didn't serve some sort of purpose. It's right, like at that low level, it could be adaptive, that it probably has helped us in social situations and keep ourselves safe. So, if I am interacting with somebody and I'm like, oh, this isn't going well for whatever reason, I then can remove myself from the situation, can try to like mitigate whatever social damage I think is happening. It's tricky because we are taught, especially women, to be really focused on the social cues that other people are putting out. To, make sure that you're being polite and that you're being kind and that you're, having a purposeful consideration of how the other person is feeling. It can like go very too far in one direction, in that like then we're overly focused on pleasing other people more than we are in considering ourselves and like soothing ourselves in a moment. I'm curious, what else would you add?
I think it's like you said, it must be adaptive because there's the reason that we all do it to some extent. And maybe a sense of security as well. So our brains don't like the unknown. And
Mm,
if we can fill in the blanks with information, um, and again, probably the reason why it's negative is for survival. That would be a lot safer to assume kind of worst case scenario at times, or filling in with negative things than positive or neutral. So I think it's adaptive. I think it's survival. And one of those things, like you said earlier, when used too much, then it becomes a problem. When people come to you, clients come to you and they have this struggle,
mm.
what are some tips that you suggest for them to maybe start to switch this around?
Two thoughts come to mind. So, one is rolling with the discomfort. So, you might be in a situation where you are feeling like it's not going well, or you're worried what the other person is thinking or saying, and you just need to ride it out. Like, so you're giving a speech in front of an auditorium of 500 people. We both do speaking, right? And so we're like, okay, great, this sounds amazing. If that's not your thing, and you're like, I have to give this speech because I'm mandated to do it for some reason. Like, okay, you're going to mind read most likely if you're falling into this trap, right? You might mind read like, oh, people aren't enjoying this, or not listening to me, or they're not like I'm sounding not smart to them. Like you might be filling in these blanks in the script in lots of ways. So soothing yourself in those moments and rolling with that discomfort. So
Mhm.
can you reassure yourself that, yeah, even if you assume that all those 500 people in that room, they don't like what you're saying. They're like, oh, we just don't like it. Julie was saying all the wrong stuff, and they're my anti fans now. Like, okay, can I soothe myself with the fact that there are people who still love me, who still care about me, who will support me and encourage me, and I'll still have those people in my life, that I'm very thankful to have. But that like messing up one speech or somebody not liking me doesn't mean that I'm not lovable
Mhm.
or worthy of love. The other thought, and I'm really curious your thought about these. The other thing I'll add is checking in with the other person. So like in that scenario, you might not, Stacey, we probably wouldn't go and try to check in with 500 people. That might be not adaptive. However, if we're having a conversation with somebody and we think it's not going well and it feels appropriate and meaningful and important to check in, to calmly, comfortably, privately talk to that person and say, hey, I'm putting it on myself,
Right.
wondering if we jointly can talk about how this is going, or how our communication's going, or just kind of check in and see how we're both feeling. And in those situations, being really mindful to put it on ourselves and to make it like a joint conversation versus you aren't giving me the signals I'm looking for here, so I want you to tell me how things are. No, 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 no. Putting it on ourselves. But so comforting yourself, like rolling with that discomfort and soothing yourself, and also asking the other person when it feels okay to do so and in a safe way for both you and them. Like ask them and using that I and we language. What else might you add? What other tools?
Well, I love the idea of clear communication. It's so simple. And you probably had the experience where you asked a client, what did you ask them what they were thinking or doing? And no, it didn't occur to them. They just filled it all in and got upset and then acted as if that was factual. And so that's another thing that I think can be really helpful is asking yourself, where's the evidence for this belief,
Mm.
this assumption? Where's my proof? Is it something that I'm just sort of creating in my head? And then to your point, how can I get the evidence? And so if it's with somebody else, that might be asking them, how I felt this was going on. Can you help me understand what you were meaning by that or something along those lines? So yeah, I think checking in and not assuming and looking for the evidence are all really helpful.
Say we're having an interaction and I'm feeling I it would be helpful to check in because I'm all up in my head.
Hmm.
And say you give me feedback that like, yeah, no, that wasn't really going well. I want to be mindful that I'm not mind reading more and saying like, well, she's saying it didn't go well, but she really wants to like, really complain at me and she's not saying it. Or like, oh, like I need to be listening to what she's actually saying so that I can like take that and do something with it and not just beat myself up with it, but like do something productive. Okay, how might I go about this differently in the future? How might I, coach myself in these moments to not let the worry overtake me? It's an overall message that like mind reading, it's an unhelpful trap we fall into, but it could be helpful at like really low levels. So notice when it's not based on any objective evidence that and being honest with yourself and checking in to say, is there evidence for why I'm thinking this, or is this just a worried thought? Because
Hmm.
we have lots of those, and that means you're human. But like, make space for, this might not actually be how that person's feeling. It might just be my worry.
I love that. Maybe also labeling the thought, this is a guess, it's not a
Mm,
fact. And then again, taking the steps to really get the evidence that you need, whether it's a conversation for clarification or
mhm.
some other information. So really kind of that cognitive, another sort of jargon word, where you kind of take it outside of you and really look at it as something objective can be helpful. And so labeling it as a guess, while you're gathering information can kind of keep that physiology from kind of getting away from us.
Hope that listeners, you all have gotten value from our conversation today. Please message us on YouTube or LinkedIn with suggestions for future questions you'd like us to discuss. And we just hope you are all well and catch your mind reading as you go throughout your day.